Hey guys, this is Jason. I'm back with my review for Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau and stars Robert Downey Jr., Terrence Howard, Jeff Bridges, and Gwenneth Paltrow. And it is about a genius, billionaire, playboy philanthropist named Tony Stark, played by Downey Jr., who is testing his Jericho missile for the army. But then his heart gets damaged by a rocket, and terrorists with his weapons take him for hostage, and they want him to make their own Jericho missile so that they can use it to kill people, but Tony's like, no, I am not doing that for you. So he makes a suit of armor and escapes, and he tries to find out who has been selling his weapons to the terrorists and becomes Iron Man. It is the very first MCU film from 2008 that a lot of people and critics saw and loved it. Plus, this movie also came out in a pretty big time for movies like The Dark Knight, WALL-E, Kung Fu Panda, Cloverfield, Taken, and it started a big movie universe that is still going to this day, but with their newer films, they haven't been the greatest. Most of them have either been mediocre or just really bad, with some pretty good ones. But this movie came out in a time where not everyone knew who Iron Man was, because they were mostly familiar with other Marvel characters like Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Incredible Hulk. And this movie was about a guy that builds a suit of armor himself and saves people, and not a lot of people knew about who this character was, except for me, because I've seen him in some of the animated stuff that he is in, so I was already familiar with the Iron Man character as a kid, and I already found out that they were making a live-action Iron Man film at that time, but I didn't know how it would look until my dad showed me the first trailer for it, and when I watched that trailer, I lost my mind. I sadly did not see this film in theaters because me and my parents couldn't afford to go to the movies a lot at that time, so I had to wait until the DVD came out. So after that big scene where Tony gets his heart damaged and gets kidnapped, we get a long opening scene that takes place before that opening, where we learn that he is both a genius and a billionaire and not so much of a nice guy when you see him in person talking to other people, and he's just gambling a lot and missing awards that he's supposed to go to. But we also learn that he is trying to keep his father's legacy alive by creating weapons to protect people around the world from terrorists. And we also see that he's trying to sell his Jericho missile to the army, but after a rocket explodes and leaves shrapnel through his heart, and he gets taken by these terrorists, and gets a machine with a little arc reactor to help keep him alive, he finds out that these terrorists that took him are using his weapons to kill people, and that gets him to realize after seeing them in the wrong hands, he has to shut down the weapons manufacturers. And that kind of makes a big change for Tony's life, where he goes from a rich, arrogant jerk to someone that cares about people and wants to help them. And you do start to care for Tony when he's out there killing the bad guys, and he does start to suspect that something bad is going on with his company, and someone might be selling his weapons behind his back. And seeing him go through that change is one of the reasons why Tony Stark is one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and Robert Downey Jr. is perfect as the character. And when you think of perfect casting choices for a comic book character, you would often think of actors like Christopher Reeve as Superman, or Wesley Snipes as Blade, or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Now, we all know that Robert Downey Jr. is great as Iron Man, but when this film was coming out, this was a huge thing for him because he was going through a bit of a struggle around this time, because for a long time, and I'm gonna say it correctly this time because I know I got it wrong the first time, Robert Downey Jr. was going through an issue that related to both alcohol and drug issues. And after he stopped doing drugs in 2003, no one in Hollywood wanted to hire him because of those issues, despite the fact that he still got some very popular roles in movies like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac. But besides those films, he wasn't getting to a lot of big stuff until this film, which made him a big name in the film industry thanks to this film and the whole MCU that he's in, which was one hell of a way to redeem his career, and now he's one of the most highly paid and bankable actors in Hollywood right now, and he's an Oscar-winning actor for movies like Oppenheimer, and he's now Doctor Doom. we'll have to see how that goes with Marvel, I guess. Jon Favreau does a really good job making this film feel more realistic and grounded, and he's done a lot of that in most of his films. Like when you look at some of his earlier films like Zathura, that has a very gritty and realistic look to it, but he's also known for making some fun movies like Elf with Will Ferrell and The Jungle Book from 2016, and now he's known for doing The Mandalorian. And for me, in case if you're wondering, my favorite films of his are Iron Man and Chef. That film is a really good movie. I do recommend watching Chef if you haven't, but if you watch that film, you might feel really hungry afterwards because of the food that film has. And this is one of the more down-to-earth MCU films that doesn't relate to any gods, wizards, or aliens. It just relates to very real and grounded people, which this film also came out during a time where comic book films, for the most part, were being taken seriously, like most of the Blade films, the first two X-Men films, the first two Spider-Man films directed by Sam Raimi, V for Vendetta, Batman Begins, and The Dark Knight. And this is still a start for the Marvel Cinematic Universe becoming a big household name that we know today. And Marvel should learn a lot from this film, and not by making an Iron Man 4, but understand why a lot of people loved the first Iron Man when it first came out. And the acting is pretty solid. I've already covered Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, and Gwenneth Paltrow is also pretty good as Pepper Potts, his secretary and possible love interest for him, because this movie does hint a couple of times that they might be together, but you don't get to see the whole payoff in this film, so you just get like little hints of that. And Terrence Howard is also really good as Tony's best friend James Rhodes, or as everyone calls him, Rhodey. And watching him in this film is a little weird now, because there's a scene in this film where it's supposed to set him up to become War Machine in Iron Man 2, and he does become War Machine in that film. But, and then there are the CGI and the visual effects when Tony is putting on the suit and he's in battle. And when I was rewatching this film for this review, I was surprised that a lot of the CGI still holds up, even to this day. None of it looks dated or cartoony. It still looks really cool when he's in battle or flying around. And we also try to see him use the suit himself, and it can be a struggle for him for a while. It doesn't start with him being perfect when he's starting to use the suit, because he's trying to make the suit work when he's flying. He's even trying to go to space in one of his first few suits, but it doesn't work the first time, which I also gotta bring up the action sequences with the CGI. They are still a lot of fun to watch when Iron Man is in battle, making bullets useless for the terrorists when they're shooting at him. And the action here doesn't feel safe. It feels like some real stuff is going down when all that is happening. It even looks cool when he's flying, like in one scene when Tony is in a suit and he's flying with these jets that are trying to kill him because they think he's an unidentified object that's with the terrorists. And as you can tell, this movie got a lot of stuff right, like the acting, the story, the action sequences, the CGI. A lot of it was done really well here. This movie got a lot of things right, except for one thing, and this is kind of a spoiler, and it's my only issue with the film, so if you don't want this movie spoiled in case if you haven't seen this movie yet, that's your warning. And if you still want to watch the rest of the video besides this spoiler, then skip to this time. And one issue that I have with this film that's keeping me from saying that it's perfect is the main villain of the film, who is revealed to be Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, who later becomes the Ironmonger. And for most of the film, he's supposed to be a nice mentor to Tony Stark and tries to talk to him to using more of their weapons. And then we later find out that he's a twist villain that got Tony stuck with the terrorists in the first place and sold them his weapons just so that he can take over Tony's father's company. Now, Jeff Bridges is good as Obadiah Stane. He does a great job as the villain of the film. It's just the writing for him that was was the problem. That made him a very predictable twist villain that you can already see coming from a mile away. And for whatever reason, this movie decides not to give Obadiah a motive or a reason for why he wants Tony dead and wants to take over the company. He just wants to do it just because. Like, I think this movie should have given a better reason for Obadiah to do all this stuff instead of like maybe just money, if that's the reason. But regardless of that, Iron Man is still one of my favorite MCU films of all time, and I actually think it's pretty underrated because when you compare it to movies like The Winter Soldier or Guardians of the Galaxy or Avengers Infinity War, people would look at this film and say it's fine, but they also have to realize that this movie is the reason we have an MCU right now. If this movie failed when it first came out, then we wouldn't have an MCU. And also popularized credit scenes, because this movie has one where it introduces Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury telling Tony about the Avenger Initiative, which is the first film to set up the Avengers. I'm gonna give Iron Man an A-. So guys, if you have seen Iron Man, what did you think about it? Did you think it's an awesome movie, or do you think that this movie hasn't aged well? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.